Good evening. Now this is what I like to refer to as Candlelight Yin. We're getting into that time of year where it's not probably going to get that dark. we're just a couple of weeks away from the solstice. So I'm not too worried about it. I've got some lights on just so you'll be able to see me because, again, of course, I wear black pants. So eventually I will swap over to all the super light colors, but I just haven't yet for whatever reason. I think somehow in quarantine I got stuck in my dark wintertime color palette and I haven't come out yet, even though there's a lot of green growth things happening outside my home. In any case, we are going to use a strap for tonight's practice. Now, this is a yoga strap, and there are lots of different kinds of yoga straps. What I like about this one is I can use the buckle to make a loop, and I think the loop is a more comfortable thing to hang on to. So if you don't have a strap but you've got a scarf, so this is just a long, you know, it's like a scarf it says Namaste on it, that's kind of yoga-ish, but, but it's really just a scarf you would use around your neck for fancy, you know, to be fancy. You could also use a winter scarf if you, like me, haven't put your winter things away yet. But if you tie your scarf in a loop, then you've got a loop as well, okay? So you can do anything like that. If you've got a dog leash and it's got a loop on it, that'll be helpful. Anything that you can kind of loop your arm through or hold on to a little more easily, because we're gonna do a couple of stretches with the strap that we're gonna stay for a couple minutes in each position, so our arm might get tired. Okay, so have that kind of ready, because that's gonna happen near the beginning of the practice. You can just set it where it's kind of easy to access. I have a little bottle of water in case I need to have something to drink. Sometimes when I talk to you guys a lot, I need to drink. And then we're gonna start in a reclining position. Now you can do, I'm gonna start with reclining butterfly where my feet are together and my knees are open, because it hits all of the areas of the legs where acupuncture meridians live, all the main ones for all the big organs. So it's a great pose from a perspective of, like, I'm gonna try to tug on all the interesting places of my connective tissue that might have some bearing on those energetic pathways. If that's not your jam, you can start any way you want. I'm also gonna start with a little shoulder opener. So one of the things that happens to me when I feel stress and anxiety is I tend to I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I tend to hang my shoulder forward. I also happen to do this for a variety of other reasons, like I'm working over my computers or other devices, or, you know, just from kind of wanting to hide or crawl into myself a little bit. So if you're like me, what happens over time is this becomes almost like a sort of permanent set point. And so what is very helpful is to do things that allow the arm bone to release back and the shoulder blades to release away from my upper back. They tend to get kind of sticky. So that's what these kinds of poses are for. And I'm gonna do a really gentle one that's great for really targeting just the stabilizing tissue in the shoulder. Okay, so first, while I'm kind of setting this up, I'm just gonna do a brief, because I don't know, you guys probably are aware of the things about yin, but I'm just gonna share just a little tidbit. So there are two yogas that are in kind of this, they're sort of cousins in one little camp in these kind of slower, longer kinds of yoga poses, and that's yin yoga and restorative yoga. And the poses are very similar, and in fact, there might be poses that we sort of interchange. Now, some people do yin with no props, but for me, props are necessary in order to be able to do the poses at an appropriate level. So with restorative yoga, what we're going for is purely to relax, because we're trying to access that part of our nervous system that is constantly asking the question, am I safe, am I safe, am I safe? And answer that with an affirmative yes, and then allow the body to slide into that parasympathetic, oh, I'm safe, now I can really let go, and focus on other activities like digesting my food and things that are more hopeful and future thinking that our body does, right? To to produce and separate nutrients and stuff, your body has to think there's a reason to want to do that. And so if we're constantly under stress and pressure, then our body is going to shut down some of those digestive functions and other functions that are more hopeful and creative and productive, okay? And we go into more of a survival mode. So restorative yoga is purely about creating a situation where the body feels safe, and most importantly, the nervous system feels safe, and then we just let go. Now, yin is a little different. We are going to try to make the body feel safe, but we also want there to be a little something that's interesting, a little tiny bit of discomfort, not such a level of discomfort that we find ourselves tightening or trying to pull away from it or fighting it, but just enough discomfort that we have to work at a place mentally and emotionally as well as physically, because these things are not separate. This is all interconnected. So when we work at a level of physical discomfort that's like just kind of on an inkling of discomfort, but then we stay in it and we breathe and we relax into that inkling of discomfort, right? Then we teach ourselves how to be present for discomfort, for having to learn and grow and explore what it is to be uncomfortable and okay with that. That's really the power of yin yoga. And that's what we're after. So we're gonna do poses at like just the beginning level of discomfort. I feel something kind of spicy in my body, but not at such a level that I'm then starting to feel myself fight, because I don't want to get into that am I safe, am I safe, am I safe nervous system. I want to be just on the edge of no, we're okay. It's like we should pay attention. Just on that edge. And that's what is meant by the edge in yin yoga. It's really more of a nervous system edge, as opposed to like, I feel like I'm gonna tear my hamstring out of my butt edge, right? A little bit of discomfort, not too much, just enough. Still we can relax and we kind of hover in that space. Okay, so that's why I use props, because they help me find that just beginning place. For you, you might be able to find that without the props, or it might be better without props. You might need more props. So you just get what you need. Okay, so we are gonna use a strap probably. You can do it without, but probably we're gonna use one of those. I'm gonna use this big pillow. You can replace a big pillow with 2 smaller pillows if you don't have a big pillow, right? You don't have a big yoga bolster, no worries. Maybe you have a couple of small throw pillows on your bed or on your couch, and you can use those. And then you can also just grab a few blankets. So I'm gonna start with this blanket, and I'm gonna start with this larger pillow, because I'm gonna create that spot right at the beginning where I feel it, but not too much. I want it to be just the right amount of spicy. All right. So I'm gonna lay down over this guy, and before I do that, I'm gonna position this so that it's under my legs and I can fiddle with it. Okay, I wanna get my back right on the center of this blanket. So I don't know if you can see it in the video, but like my shoulder has a little bit of room before it touches the ground on either side, okay? So it's not a huge amount, like an inch or so, inch and a half, but that's enough. Again, I'm not trying to work at the level of, oh, I'm about to tear my chest muscles out of my, off my breastbone. I want to just feel this like slightly spicy sensation of these deep stabilizer muscles in my shoulder having to realign, right? And this is really powerful at joints, because when we kind of realign joints and we provide them this little bit of stress, this little bit of pressure, they respond generally by producing more fluid and becoming more comfortable, all right? If we go too far, then we respond with injury. We don't want the injury response. Okay, so I've got my back on this so that the bottom of this blanket is all the way below my lowest rib and in my kind of low back area. It doesn't have to go slam up against your pelvis, but it can. And then I'm also gonna create just the tiniest bit of extra support under my head so that my chin is nice and level. Okay, So now with the pillows underneath my knees, I'm going to drop my knees open so that I feel just this little inkling of spiciness right here in my inner thighs. Now, it's possible that in partway through this little pose, I might get rid of this pillow because this little bit of spicy that I feel right now might soften. That happens sometimes. So that's why we're constantly kind of coming back to the practice. And it's also why we're holding it for a while. It's so that we have a chance for there to be kind of an arc of sensation. Like quite spicy at the beginning, maybe it gets a little softer, maybe we surf in or we back off, depending on how the body responds. Okay, so now once you've gotten yourself settled, then we're gonna focus tonight on exhaling completely. So take a big breath and exhale and try to, just let it all go. Just really let all the exhale air come out. Again, one of the things that's interesting about anxiety or times of anxiety is sometimes we'll find ourselves actually not completely exhaling. It's like some part of our nervous system is afraid that we're going to run out of oxygen. And so it just holds on to a little tiny notch of the breath. So we're going to try to really be willing to let go completely and completely surrender out the exhale. You may find once you settle that you have to make a couple little adjustments. Make the adjustments and then just come back to stillness. We're not trying to be hyper still. We're not holding ourselves still. We're allowing for stillness to occur. But if you're feeling uncomfortable, fix it, right? Adjust it, add more props, take some away, whatever it is that's necessary to arrive at that line that I described earlier. Just when you think about it, check in with your exhales and just make sure you're letting go so completely that there's almost this kind of feeling of hollowing at the very end of that exhale. And then feel the inhale, like the moment that it drops in, it has this really interesting quality, that space right between the end of an exhale and the beginning of the next inhale. Just really lovely kind of lightness to that spot. Stay here for about another minute. Just riding the quality of the breath. take a big breath. And start somewhere. So I'm going to start with my legs because I took that pillow out for the last minute so that I could get like just that little bit of extra bit of spiciness there. And now I'm here, and so I'm going to kind of pause. I'm going to take this out from under my back in a second, but right now it's just kind of fun to feel, right? I've got a little bit of movement going, and then I'm just going to pause for a second. And then I'm going to take this guy out and come back. And then I'm going to pause again. So I'm going to keep that stuff handy because I might want it in a second. But there's a quality that, for me, and this is always when I talk about stuff, it's like this is what I'm experiencing, and I'm sharing it with you in the hopes that it kind of gives you some ideas. But I want you to go in there and figure it out on your own. Don't just take my word for things. But what happens when I come off either the blanket or a bolster or blocks, anything I've put underneath my back to kind of create this situation change in the shoulders, is that it feels like my upper back sort of spreads out like butter melting on toast. just whoa, soft and my mind delicious and just really lovely. It's a really lovely quality. And it feels like my arm bone, instead of being almost pulled forward, is dropped back into the shoulder in a way that just makes the whole thing feel more harmonious and a little lighter. And so I love it. I think it's a really lovely thing to do kind of regularly. And often for me, especially if I've spent a lot of time around a computer on a given day, is I'll lay down for 10 or 15 minutes with my feet in this constructive rest position like I have them in now, and a blanket under my back, and just allow myself a little reset. And that might be my only yoga practice for a day, is just breathing and doing that one pose. Or the butterfly, because I like that with the legs too. But it's really, it's very interesting to me. So I give it to you and suggest that if you have a job where you have to kind of work with your arms forward a lot, whether that's at a desk or you're a hairdresser or you drive or whatever your job might be, that those kinds of things that pull the arm forward, the body will try, because these are such deep muscles that stabilize a really important joint in our body. Our shoulder is such an important joint because we're, you know, bipedal and we have opposable thumbs. So as one of the few creatures on the planet Earth that has those two qualities, our arms are super important, and we reach out and have our whole lives, like we touch, right? This is our whole thing. And so when we operate with our arms forward, our shoulder wants to be efficient, and so it tightens and adjusts the muscle so that it will hold us like that. So this is such an important little reset button. And so just notice it for yourself. Now we're going to do some movement in the arm and some movement in the hips. We're going to do these kind of Dvipada Pitham bridgey things. And you can leave your arms over your head the whole time, or you can move the arms up and down. I'm going to leave mine over my head. And sometimes I like them straight, but most of the time I like them almost more like a cactus. And you can even have them lower than that if you want to, or keep them even down by your sides. So I like kind of a little cactus around my head. And then we're going to plant the feet, and we're just going to let a nice big inhale happen. And then with a full exhale, lift your hips. And when you get up here to the tippy top, and I have my toes off the floor so I can move my hips real easy, just kind of surf the top and then roll yourself down, upper back, middle back, lower back. And you can come up onto your tiptoes instead of the heels. The heels often work better for me, but tiptoes, sometimes I do tiptoes instead. So you just can pick, right? And so I've done one, and now I'm just rinsing it out and feeling what happened. I'm going to do another one. I'm going to do about 4 of them. You can do as many as you want, okay? So when you feel like doing the next one, take a breath. Exhale out a complete exhale. That little feeling of a hollowing there, and then lift. And inhale while you're up here. You can even feel this kind of Jalandhara Bandha. If that's not comfortable, lower your arms, and then I'm going to bring my upper back, my middle back, my lower back, and then my pelvis to the floor. And then I'm going to rinse it out a little bit. There's this really interesting quality to this Dvipadipitham that when I do it and really pay attention, I love. It's kind of sweet. It's just, oh, I really just like it. It's a very interesting pose. So we're gonna do it again. Oh, I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna, with that exhale, take my hips up, take a big breath. And then I'm gonna exhale. Ooh, I'm gonna use the whole exhale to come down. So that I'm hollowing out right there at the end. And then letting that inhale drop back in. Now, if you get like a choky feeling, don't take that long to do it. Like, take the right amount of time for you. So if it feels like your throat is closing, you're getting a choking sensation, you're waiting too long. Let yourself have your inhale come in a little bit sooner. If you can do that kind of hollowing at the end and it feels kind of cool, then hold it a little bit longer. The holding the exhale out is interesting. And again, like for me, I perceive it as being a way of kind of, it creates a light sensation in my body, almost effervescent. For you, it might be different. So check out and see what it does for you. If you kind of hold that exhale out for a second, don't do it too long, just the right amount of time. So I'm gonna do this one more time. So there's my big breath and then my exhale. I'm gonna let that all come out and then I'm gonna lift. Take an inhale. It's interesting to do with the Bandha. And then I'm going to take my whole exhale here to come down. See how long I can linger it. And then let the inhale drop in. All right, so that's the little Dvipadipitham. And we did this in a really interesting way, right? So this is something I do in gentle yoga. Again, I do it in, even I've done it in vinyasa yoga, but in a yin world, right, it's just like that little tiny white dot in our otherwise big yin paisley shape of our practice. So just a little bit of activity, but just to sort of heighten our awareness of the breath, okay? So now, and to heighten our awareness of the pelvis and the movement in our back. So we're gonna do a weird thing. We're gonna do one more thing before we stretch out our leg. And that is we're gonna do this little jiggle, okay? So I'm gonna show you two different ways to do this. So possibility number one is you leave your feet on the ground and then you're just gonna rock yourself back and forth. Now, your butt should be soft. So if you're gripping with your butt, don't do that. You're just kind of using your legs to make your body rock back and forth. Okay, can you see how my head kind of like rocks all the way through my whole spine? Head is moving, torso is moving. Okay, one more. All right, so that's the first way, and then pause for a second and feel. That's where it gets really cool. All right, so again, we're trying to tune into our nervous system. And does this kind of rocking action do anything to your nervous system that feels interesting? Again, for me, there's a kind of lightness, a kind of sweetness that happens. It just feels really soothing. So the other way to do this, I might have given myself a little bit more room, is to have your legs totally straight and then you just rock your feet back and forth. And you can see if you like this one better. And again, keep the face soft, keep your butt soft, let your eyes get kind of jiggly in your skull. Like it's really super, super relaxed in the rest of the body. And the head just is allowed to wiggle, 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 wiggle. Just using our feet. Okay, do it one more time, and then just relax. Now I think I like the one with my knees bent more, but this one is also nice. Like you just kind of feel where it lands you. And this is a great movement to do sort of in between poses, to kind of rinse yourself out and to create this kind of, it's almost like a little cranial, self-cranial sacral therapy. So there, you know, between our cranium and our sacrum lives our spinal cord. And so, and all of this kind of vertebral column, you know, everything is protected by these two points, right, between the back of the head and the sacrum. It's also, we have a vagus nerve that runs down the front of the body and a vagus nerve that runs down the back body, and these are powerful nerves for our parasympathetic nervous system. Some people estimate that as much as 75% of our ability to relax and experience things in that relaxed nervous system is a responsibility of this one particular pair of nerves. And I, you know, I don't know if that's totally true, but it's interesting. So I find this little rocking very soothing and calming for that part of my nervous system. Okay, so we're gonna do one leg at a time, and we're gonna kind of get into this sort of hamstring situation. Now, you could, like some people will be able to hold on to their big toe, and that's gonna be fine. And some people may hold on to their ankle, or their calf, or their leg. And if you don't wanna do it with a strap, you can definitely do it this way. Now, what I like about the strap is that, especially if I have a loop, is I can put that kind of around my wrist or around my hand, and I can just kind of let my arm hang, and I can make the loop bigger if I want my arm to actually rest on the floor, right? I can do it like that, so it's nice and big, and my elbow can rest a little bit more. And I'm a fan. So you can do a smaller loop where just your wrist goes in, or a larger loop where your whole arm goes in. It just depends on what's best for you. If the strap is down closer to the sole of your foot or the heel, your toes will point, that's a little bit more relaxed. If you bring the strap up near your toes, then your calf muscles get a little bit involved. So you can put this foot on the ground, you can stretch that leg out. My favorite version of this is to just put this pillow back under there. So I've got a relaxed hip here, and I can focus on this kind of nice spicy hamstring situation. And again, you can do lots of different things here. You can bend your knee and straighten more. Your toes can be sort of more low, or they can be more pointy. You can rotate the leg a little bit in or a little bit out. So there's lots of ways to sort of play with your relationship to your hamstrings. And I'm trying to let my eyes stay really soft, my mouth stay really relaxed. And focus on those deep, smooth breaths that let a full exhale happen. If I can't keep those full, deep breaths going, probably I'm doing something that's too spicy. So we're gonna stay for one more minute in this particular position. Again, so sometimes I'll find like tension gathering around my mouth, and that is always, you know, a thing that I check in with. Sometimes it's habitual, but sometimes it's because things are too spicy. I need to back off. And so you just want that just the right amount of spice. So it feels interesting. It's a little bit challenging to stay here, but not impossible. Less than 30 seconds here, yogis. The other thing that I really like about this sort of thing too is it gives me a chance, I've got to turn a little diagonal to do the next pose, but it gives me a chance to really notice and to really get intimate with my nervous system. Okay, so we're taking the leg out to the side. Now, I am gonna take my pillow and I'm gonna pull it right up against my hip so that I have a tiny bit of support under there, because my inner thigh is a little bit more sensitive than my hamstrings. My hamstrings will put up with a good deal more spicy, whereas my inner thighs, I think, because they're so, all the connection points are on the pubic bone and the sit bone, but mostly the pubic bone. I think that it's just it's a lot more sensitive to me, and the inner knee is a sensitive area. And so having that little pillow there kind of gives me something to find a way to get that just right level. Not too much, not too little. An interesting position to be in. It doesn't cause the tension that develops right here around my temples when I don't use it. You can get really intimate, you know, kind of really start to notice, like, what are my tells, right, for tension? Because all of us think we have a poker face, but we really don't have a poker face. Like, there's little things that our body does when we're tense or when things are interesting. And so this gives us a chance to really get clear on those and kind of intimate with the things that happen in our own body. What are the ways that my nervous system tries to protect me? Does it tense up my shoulders? Does it tense up my face? Is it in my mouth? Is it all of the above? Getting to know for yourself, what are your little things? How can you tell when the situation around you is too exciting? Okay, yogis, you're doing great. We're just gonna stay for a wee bit longer, about 30 more seconds. So take a big breath, and we're going to bend the knee just a little bit to come back toward the center, and then we're going to come across the body. Now, you can make this, you can keep this strap, right? I am going to actually soften this whole thing down and make it into just a twist. So I'm going to do the twist that's called the twisting vines, where you wrap one leg around the other, and I can't hook my foot a second time, but I just let it drop over the edge of this pillow. And then I'm going to stretch out through my arm and let the upper body get a little bit of this release as well. So I've got a little spiciness right here in my chest muscles, a little bit of spiciness on this outer hip IT band area. We're going to come back to this area again. But this just kind of is nice. And then, of course, the twist in the spine. And again, I want this to be like just a little spicy. Not too much, not too little. Just the right amount of spicy. So sometimes the props are helpful for giving you something to drop over or keeping you from going too far. And if you don't need the props, get rid of them. You can adjust your head in different ways. And you come back to the breath. Are you letting go completely with those exhales? There's like a little bit of that exhale trying to hold on. Stay for about 30 more seconds, yogis. You're doing good. might have stayed longer. I got lost in my breath. Come on back, yogis. So we're going to give ourselves a chance to rinse out. That might have been a whole other minute. Hopefully it wasn't so bad. Just notice now again, so you can do whatever little movement, and if you like that little jiggly movement, oh, you can do that little jiggly thing again. See if you can let your eyeballs relax so much that they sort of jiggle around in the sockets. And then just pause for a second and feel. And I love the kind of looser sensation of the side that I've done, but the side I haven't done, sort of, that's how I walked in, that's how I got on the mat tonight. Everything felt like that. But it's kind of fun to feel the difference, right? And you may not feel a difference, but just if you do. So I'm going to do the other side. Hopefully you're coming with me. So to begin with, I'm going to kind of set myself up here. And again, we're going to start with these hamstrings, so you can bring your knee in, give yourself a little hug, and decide whether you're going to hold on to the leg with a strap, or whether you're going to hold on to the leg with your hand, whatever you got handy. This side for me is a little tighter, so I give myself a tiny bit more room. I might need even more than that, we'll see. And so again, I want to feel this kind of sensation right in this back of my thigh, and depending on how I position my leg, I might feel it more over here where the two heads of the biceps femoris live, or the other two hamstrings that live here in the center. They're a little bit different, a little bit more interesting to try to access those. And for me, rotating the leg a little bit is what helps find those kind of slightly more insides. If I turn the leg out, I feel a little less pressure on this outer part and a little bit more of the sensation in here. Now we get some of it when we go to the open thigh as well. So if I want to focus more attention on these outer hamstrings, turning my toes inward a little bit more kind of gives me a little bit more focus there. And so that's, you know, you just kind of experiment and see if that's true for you, or if you've got other sensations that you notice. And again, you can play with the movement, a little bit more bend in the knee or straighter leg. Again, we're looking for this kind of place where there's a little bit of sensation there and it's interesting, but we're not fighting. It doesn't feel like a fight. It feels like, whoo, that's a little spicy. But it's good spicy, not a fight spicy. Also kind of checking in with, can I feel this kind of sense of my kind of surrendering into the exhale. Where does the life force kind of come in for you? Do you feel the sort of uplifting energy when you take an inhale? Or do you feel an uplifting energy when you exhale? It's interesting to ask yourself the question. We're going to take a big breath. And then we're going out to the side. So you might need that little extra support like I do, or maybe you need something else, a little more support, a little less. And again, so for me, this is a little more sensitive, this area, so I might, again, play with the bending of the knee or the straightening of the leg, and the adding of this extra support under the hip, just to make sure it's just the right amount. Oh yeah, that's better. things I found really interesting is there's this kind of notion, and in yoga there's a thought, and the words in Sanskrit are apona, which is the energy that you can feel moving downward in your body. And then there's prana, which is the energy you feel moving upward or lighter feeling in your body. And the way it was often described to me in yoga classes by yoga teachers was that your inhale brings in prana. So this immediately then translates over to me thinking, well, that means the inhale should feel lighter or upward moving, right? But it doesn't, not for me. Instead, the inhale feels grounding, right? Because I feel it bounce off my pelvic floor. Like there's a lot of this kind of grounding, downward moving sensation when I inhale. But when I exhale, it gets very light. And the whole body feels lighter, like I've taken a load off my shoulders. And I think that's really fascinating. We have about 30 seconds left. Just for your amusement. See what's true for you. Does the inhale feel more grounding or lighter? Does the exhale feel more grounding or lighter? Because I don't think there's a right answer, just as what you experience. But it's important to clue into your own experience. All right, so we're going to take a big breath. And then we're going to transition this guy into our twist. And again, I'm going to lose the strap for this guy and just allow myself to kind of fall over the top of this pillow. And you might decide to do it without any props, and that's fine too. The props help me get this little bit more kind of drop over with this top leg, which then gives me the spice right in this kind of IT band, gluteus medius, gluteus maximus area where all these glutes come together. Right in here are some really interesting lines of connective tissue, okay? So you've got your IT band, you've got this little tiny muscle up here called tensor fasciolata, and one of the quads, and then over on the outside, you've got gluteus medius, which is a big hip stabilizer muscle, and it's high up. You know, you think about your glutes as being on your backside, but this is like on the side of our hip, right over here. But then where the gluteus maximus comes in, and there's some really interesting connective tissue points all over in here, right? And so I like kind of getting a sense of those and how much tension is being held there, because the gluteus maximus is a really important muscle when it comes to balancing the stress muscle in our body, the psoas, and more importantly, iliopsoas, because the psoas comes way up here in the body, inside the body, not on the outside. But the iliacus lives in the bowl of the pelvis. Okay, so the glute and the iliacus really are the balancing force in the pelvis. And so, if the gluteus maximus is underdeveloped or weak or just not, you know, not as sensitive, then it has a harder time balancing this action of the psoas, this really intense kind of folding of the body in half that the psoas does. I think it's really cool. And I like feeling that connective tissue area kind of opening and getting some, you know, some interesting flow, whether that's blood flow or just nervous system movement, I don't know. What I know is that I'm paying attention to it, and that's interesting in and of itself. All right, yogis. It's not long now. We're going to stay for about, like another 45 seconds. And notice for yourself, like maybe it's just about the breath. Maybe this is a super soft pose, there's not a lot of sensation for you. take a big breath. I might have gone over a notch. And come back, but not quite as far, I don't think, as I did last time. That pose just feels good, yogis. It just is nice. Has so much going on for it. And again, so you could do this kind of little jiggly thing here. If this is not your jam, don't do this. Do something else, right? So the windshield wipers are nice. And this for me is really just because, and I turn to this little movement when I, this is going to sound dumb, I'm going to probably tell you too much information, but this is really primal for me, right? And so when I was little and I was upset, my mother would rock me, right? Even, not just when I was a baby, but even into my teenage years, really, she would hold and rock me. And so I think that's why I like this so much, is it feels like that kind of nurturing, really soothing, nice mom quality, right? So anyway, sorry about letting you in too much. But it's very lovely. Thanks, Bob. Okay, so enough of all that. But what we're going to do is kind of slowly gather ourselves up off the floor here, and we're going to come to a seated position to do kind of the next little evolution of our practice. And I'll give you a couple of options once we get there. So just take your time. You might want to do a little back massage and lay on your side for a bit. Now once you're up, we're going to do a couple hip openers. So I'm going to give you some options. I'm going to demonstrate one option, and then I'll suggest if you want to do a couple of other poses instead, you can. So we're going to do what is essentially the cow face pose, or a kind of cousin. And I do the cousin, which is in the yin world is called square pose. But you can do the cow face. I'm going to show you what I mean. Okay, it's called shoelace in the yin world. And for sometimes the easiest way to get into this is to do it from a kneeling position. And so what you would do, and I'm going to take my right leg and put it in front. And you just sort of line your knees, like right knee in front of left knee, and then you spread your feet out and you sit down, okay? And for some people, that's the easiest way to get into this. No matter how I try to get into this, without some support under my hips, I lean, which is why I do the other variation, which is the square. So if I open the space up a little, then I can get both my sit bones on the floor. And even better is if I take a block and put it in front, and I can take the bony part of my ankle off of my poor tender little inner thigh. I like this better. So another option for instead of this is to do the swan, which you might know better as the pigeon pose. So you would just have one leg forward and one leg back. And you can substitute that in place of this action if you like. Now, you can fold straight down. You can stay straight up. What I'm gonna actually do is turn. So this is my right leg up on top. I'm gonna turn a little to my right, and I'm actually gonna fold on a diagonal going this way. So to do that, I'm gonna add a little bit more yoga propage to my life. So I'm gonna put a block here so that I have a place to rest this hand, and I'm gonna use this pillow, both kind of underneath my knee here, at just the right spot, but also it kind of gives me a place to rest my arm. So I'm going slightly to the diagonal here, and it just makes it a little bit different. So I get a little bit more action on this IT band, but also on this bottom leg, I get a little bit more action in that area around my glute that I was talking about earlier. So, that I think is interesting and weird to play with. And so check it out for yourself and see what you think. And you can add more props or take away some props depending on how life is right now in your world. Like this for me is spicy, and like there's a lot of sensation going on, but it's not more than I can handle, and definitely relaxed, and I can definitely pay attention to the breath. But if for you, like it's all about enduring this pose, and the breath is kind of getting lost, then let go of it a little bit. And again, you can go like down the center instead of over to the diagonal, the way that I've got going on here. I'm gonna do a couple of diagonal things, this one and then the next pose. So I'm just sort of keeping that as sort of a theme. And we're staying with this guy a little bit longer. So we did the strap stretches for about 2.5 minutes. We're gonna stay with this guy, if we can, for 4 minutes, 3.5, somewhere in that range. If you need to leave a little early, you can leave early. You don't have to stay in the pose. You can do some movement. Sometimes I get a little over adventurous, shall we say. We're halfway through here, yogis. Oh, but it's getting really interesting and spicy right around this butt cheek, so I'm into it. And so again, I just kind of ride this edge, right? So things felt like it got a little softer, so I extended myself out a little further. Now things are a little spicy again. And can I kind of maintain that level of spiciness? We will find out. So this could be where you end. This is about 3 minutes. We're going to do a little bit longer than that. Or it could be that you're going to hang out with me for a little bit longer. I'm actually just going to spend my last minute with my weight shifted more towards the center, just to feel the difference, because that's interesting to me. Breath, yogis. Now, come all the way up, whatever angle you're going at. Lean, hold on, make sure I'm not gonna set my hair on fire. Lean back a little bit. I'm gonna unpretzel the legs. Okay, so this leg is going out nice and long, okay? And then this leg, actually, you can leave like this. So you can leave this in kind of this Janu Shirsasana, half dragonfly, half butterfly collection spot. What I'm gonna do instead though is almost bring myself to a saddle, a half saddle. In that I'm gonna bring this leg around and kind of get my heel, hold on. I'm gonna get my heel as close to my buttock as I can so that I've got a little bit more of a sensation on the top of this thigh. Now I'm folding forward, so it's not gonna be more like folding sideways. So it's not gonna be quite the saddle, but it gives me flavors of the saddle, right? And the more I can bring that leg behind me, the more those flavors happen. Now, I'm getting a hamstring cramp when I try to do it more, which tells me that I was right at the right spot and to not go any further. So I'm gonna do that again and try to get myself right into the sweet spot and not into the spot where I was pushing harder. Sometimes your body will tell you all kinds of things. Now, I'm essentially just gonna let myself bend over the side here. I'm gonna put my arm behind my back and let my head drop into this. And this is a little less time. We're gonna spend just 3 minutes with this pose. Now you can, again, you can do this leg or you can do the leg where you've got more of a half dragonfly or half butterfly shape in the yin world. Those are called those things. I think I'm gonna leave this head support here, but I want this little bit of spiciness on the side of my neck. So I'm trying to find the just right amount of support for my head. So I can release some of the muscles. Now for me, the muscles in the neck and the shoulder are much thinner, and it does not take as long for them to let go and stop feeling spicy. Actually, already within less than a minute, my neck is feeling quite relaxed again. And so I can look for a new spot by turning the head, or I can just put support under there and go, you know, wherever it landed. The thicker muscles down in our hips and glutes and around the low back and around the knee and even around the ankle. Those calf muscles are strong, baby. They just need a little bit more time. That's why Yin focuses so much on that tissue as opposed to the shoulder tissue. So we're gonna stay for another minute. Can you really surrender on those exhales? So this one can be tricky to get out of. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take a big breath and hold that air in a little bit so you can start to come out. Once you're upright a little bit more, you can exhale and bring that leg out of its position and then pause for a moment. We're gonna just kind of let everything readjust, right? So I've got little jiggly things happening. My head was leaning that way, so my neck feels really interesting. So I'm just kind of letting that readjust. And my spine still feels like it's bent that way, and probably it'll take another 2 or 3 breaths before it's gonna feel like it's back to neutral. I have fantastic news. We're gonna do the other side. So we're gonna start with either your swan, if you did that, or the shoelace slash cow face, or the square slash double pigeon, or fire lugs, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to use the Yin terms from here on out. Square for me. Knees close together, that's your shoelace, and then you can do the swan as well. And again, because I'm doing this seated version, I'm going to use this guy both underneath my knee a little bit here, just to provide that little bit of extra support, because I'm going to lean in this direction. And then I'm going to use a block because I'm turning on the diagonal and kind of coming forward, and I just want to give my arms somewhere to relax. And it's not extreme, and this side's a little bit more challenging for me than the other side was. It's just not quite as much room, but it might change over time. Once you've gotten yourself settled into your pose, then it's just this kind of feeling of finding your sense of release, your sense of relaxation. Your sense of letting go. we are just a wee bit past the halfway mark. We're on our way to that 3-minute mark, which could be the mark for you to come out of here. For me, again, it's gonna be a few more breaths, but about 3. But then I'm gonna move to the center and spend my last minute there. This is finally getting a little softer though, which I like that sensation. But I found it really interesting last time to kind of re-center myself and feel how that changes the way my body experiences the pose. And again, this is we're inside that last minute now. So we're going to take a really big breath. Float all the way up at the tippy top of that. And then exhale. And unwind your pose. Now this guy's going to be the straight leg. I'm not quite ready to go into the other pose just yet. I'm going to kind of shake things out a little bit here. And then I'm going to bring this guy into that. It's really the gate pose in the regular yoga world, but we're just kind of flavoring it in a yin way. So I'm going to bring this guy around. I'm folding over this guy. So again, depending on your own inclinations, you could leave that foot around to the center, or you could do it a little differently if you like. Oh. So I like to start by kind of stretching with my arm, just because it gets all of this tissue kind of where I want it. And then I'm a fan of the arm behind my back because it really focuses on this kind of tension that I carry in my trap and in my neck. And so letting that sort of release out feels nice. You might want to leave your arm kind of up and over your head, or do a different angle with things. You can even just leave the arm down beside you, really. I might spend some time there momentarily. I'm providing just enough support under my head that I got a sense that my neck is not in this all by itself, right? Again, I want to have my nervous system on that spot where it's like, oh, okay, I'm okay. I'm okay, I can relax into this spiciness. So we're about just past our halfway mark here. We're going to stay a wee bit longer. gonna take a big breath. I'm gonna pull myself up enough to get my leg out from underneath me here. Oh, and then I'm gonna pause for a moment. And let everything rinse out. Now, yogis, before we do Shavasana, we're gonna do one more pose. And I don't know which pose you're gonna do because I'm gonna give you some options. If it's feeling kind of nice to you to bring your breastbone closer to your pubic bone, then I am gonna suggest either a dragonfly pose, where you do a seated pose, or a snail pose, where you lay on your back and bring your legs over your head, kind of curl them in tight against your ears. If, on the other hand, you want to get your breastbone and your belly button farther away from each other, you want to do more of a back bending shape, may I suggest either a saddle, where you kneel on the ground, sit down between your feet, lean backwards, and maybe even lay all the way onto your back, depending on how flexible you are and how many pillows you need to put underneath you. Or you can do a sphinx, where you lay on your belly and prop up on your elbows, okay? Now, I'm feeling the dragonfly tonight, so I'm gonna do a wide angle forward bend, which is the dragonfly in the yin world. But you can do whichever of those poses seems like the right one for you. Do you feel like back bending before you do Shavasana, or is it feeling more like a forward bendy kind of situation, or even being upside down, because that's what that snail will do for you. Let's get your butt over your head, which is nice some days. Whoop. Okay, so for me, this is the way to rock and roll. And I've put support under my knees so I don't hyperextend there, and I'm gonna put some blocks out here so I have a place to rest my elbows. And then I might do like a little head support under with my forehead, or I might do this with the chin. I'll do a little bit of both. So we're gonna hang out here for a few minutes, about 3 minutes. So you can up the spice level for me anyway. If it's a 3-minute pose, I can make it a little spicier. If it's a 5-minute pose, I tend it to be a little less spicy. This is just a longer endurance. That may not be true for you, so do your thing. And again, once you're settled into the pose that you choose, try to come back to this idea of really letting completely go on those exhales. Take one more minute here. I'm gonna tell you some things, but don't come out right this second. If you decide to do the snail, where you put your legs over your head, you gotta come down out of that thing super duper slow. So you take a big breath, and then you're gonna start to peel yourself down, and kind of like we did at the very beginning with the Dvipadipitha, one vertebrae at a time, one little part of your back at a time. If you did the saddle, some people can kind of roll to the side and undo one leg and roll to the side and undo the other leg. I have to come all the way back up to get out of the saddle. So either one of those will work, but engage your core and your inner thighs to help you get out of that saddle. The Sphinx you should be able to just come down from and maybe even go to child's pose. And then if you're here with me, we're gonna take a big breath. We're gonna elongate the spine, kind of enliven the spine, and then back off of the pelvis and bend the knees. Okay, now, yogis. That stuff felt good. So we're gonna do Shavasana, little relaxation pose. Now this blanket that I was using under my knees is now gonna become like a little pillow for my head. And when I do head support, I don't like a lot of head support. I want just enough that I feel these two ridges of bone on the back of my skull just being held. So sometimes I just use the back of my mat. I just kind of fold that up. I'm gonna use a blanket tonight, but I'm gonna keep it kind of small and light so that it's just this one little roll that's gonna be underneath that section of my skull. And I also make sure there aren't any wrinkles in the blanket, so I just smooth it out, because those I will notice in a few minutes. I like to liken this to the Princess and the Pea story, where they want to see if she's a princess, so they put a lentil in the bed, and she can feel the lentils. She talks about how bad she slept, so they put another mattress on, she can still feel the lentil, they keep on going. I don't know if you know this story, but in any case, I can feel the wrinkles in the blanket. I might be a princess, it's hard to say. Now, I'm gonna let my legs get all the way straight, but you can return yours to the butterfly if that sounds like a plan. And again, I've taken the edge of this blanket and I've just kind of cuddled it, just right up, just so it kind of gently sort of cups those ridges on the back of my skull. Again, I think this has to do, the reason this feels so good is it has to do with the way the nervous system, and particularly this kind of vagus nerve or vagus nerve, depending on who you ask, works and runs through this kind of part of the body. And there is some really interesting research being done. It's called polyvagal theory. It's very interesting. Research being done in a lot of different conditions about how this nerve works. And I'm truly fascinated by it. So, okay, here we are. We're settled in. We're gonna let ourselves relax. And this is the ultimate yin pose, if you ask me, because it's just about surrendering. So this thing we've been doing with the exhale all night about just really letting that exhale go. Really letting that exhale go. Really let yourself go into Shavasana. Into this, it's called corpse pose, because that's how deeply we want to surrender. And just let it all go. yogis, it's possible that you decided to do Shavasana where you could just go to sleep. In which case, have a good night. Namaste to you. But if you're with me and we're like you're laying on your living room floor or something like that, or whatever, your den floor, wherever you might be, we're gonna start to wiggle the fingers and toes. And then stretch them apart, give them a little bit of space, and then do some work with the wrist and ankles. And stretch the fingers and toes apart again, and then we can start to stretch everything else. You could do the little windshield wipery moves, or pull your knees all the way up into your chest and do more of like a happy baby or a little hug and a massage. And then you could roll to your side for a second here. Give yourself a transition moment before you sit up. So I do hope that your yoga practice is always a kind of place for you to come home to yourself and to get in touch with what's really happening right here in this moment, what's, you know, present in your heart, with your body, with your mind. And that it provides, in some way, at least, a little recharge or a respite or a place to like refocus, right? So hopefully that it's that for you. And then, you know, over time, it's also a great way, a great catalyst for change, right? As we learn and grow and become more present in our lives, we make better choices and different choices. So hopefully it works out. Still working on that part. So let's take a big breath together. Let that exhale go completely. And then enjoy the rest of your night. Namaste, beautiful yogis. Thanks for sharing your practice with me tonight.